questions.
Thank you, Lorenzo. It was a very helpful and comprehensive presentation. So I think that
we have 1 hour for questions, right?
yeah. Now we have a question before lunch, but now you can relax a little bit. Just a couple of seconds before we start the question. I already see that there are people raising their hand. We also had several questions on Slido, so we will have, while we set up the question on Slido, we will try to answer to both. So the first question was there, but lady first.
Thank you, Nathalie. Good morning, Karine Donzel de Figier from France. My first question will be to EASA, and first I would like to thank Mr. Mazzorelli for his presentation. And so in France we have about 5,000 operators, and the number of jobs is estimated at about 10,000. It means that our operators have about 2 people each. So each time one of these operators will want to operate in specific, and that can come very quickly, just need to fly above 120 meters, just need to fly BVLOS or something else, they will have to get either an authorization or to be able to use a standard scenario. So my question is, how will we ensure a balance between standard scenarios and let's say mission-specific authorization? Because if you get too many standard scenarios, you will have operators wondering whether the mission belongs to standard scenario number 13 or if it is not standard scenario number 49. And perhaps the national authority reviewing it will think that, well, 35 might be more appropriate. So the more standard scenarios there are, the more complicated it will be to find the right one for the mission. But the less standard scenarios there are, the more complicated it will be for both operator and national authority to fulfill a safety and risk assessment, and after that to analyze and use it. So what is your strategy?
It was for EASA, not for me. I can add to that, but...
As you will see during the workshop, we want to develop or provide the standard scenarios that are necessary to accommodate the intended operations in a safe way, and this will first automatically limit the number and scenarios, but also in the process so far we have more seen that we have quite a limited number at the moment, and we try to make it in a way that it can accommodate some variations of the operation in a safe way, especially when it's a declarative standard scenario. But I don't see at all the risk at the moment that we have too many standard scenarios. I more see the need to have sufficient detailed scenarios to not spend too much time in the risk assessment process, especially on the authority side, to really be able to focus on the operations that go outside of the standard, because there we need probably much more time to develop together with the operator the adequate mitigations.
Can I hook on your question at the beginning? You said something super intelligent, that is, how do you ensure consistency between something that has a standard scenario and something that has to go through the SORA process if there is no scenario? And you know, guys, this has been like my staple questions for the past years, because we were saying if you start to use different risk assessment models and methods to analyze different scenarios, them being subjective, you're going to end up with different scenarios with different level of risks between themselves, right? And this was, I think, now we all agree on that. The idea was, however, if we manage to use the same method to analyze each individual scenario, at least methodologically we are at the same level. Then, of course, you need to do continued airworthiness and understand what's going on. But methodologically, you want each scenario to be assessed in the same way. Otherwise, you're going to end up with different results. And I think that's what we have been trying to do with the SORA in JARUS, to say, can we use this method, as far as JARUS is concerned, to generate scenarios? And the answer was yes. That's where the first one comes from. But of course, you might, if you don't use it and you do something else, you might end up with different mitigations, and then it's up to you to decide, what is good and what is bad. I mean, that's just my take.
Yeah, if I may continue. In fact, of our more than 5,300 operators, a lot of them, nearly 5,000 if I'm not mistaken, are authorized to operate in category S3, which means in urban areas. Mm-hmm. So yes. Without a standard scenario covering that, or without many standard scenarios covering this kind of operations, we are at risk of getting lots and lots and lots of requests for authorization for missions. And it might be the same for other authorities in other scenarios. I know that S3 is one of the scenarios we intend to tackle at the beginning, but there is this risk of getting many authorization to analyze if we don't have the right number of standard scenarios.
Yes, thank you. This will be our next activity, so developing a standard scenario, and this is something new. Also, we need to try to find the right balance, so something that we will do in next future. You have the next question?
Thank you. Ralf Ortner from Austria, from the Austrian Aeronautics Industries Group. One remark and one question. The remark is about the ANSPs. I fully agree with you. The ANSPs have to be involved. The problem that we see in practical is that some of them, or the most of them that we see, don't want to be integrated. Most of the air traffic controllers don't want to see drones on their screens for the next decade. So you have to solve this social problem, I would say. The question is about, and it goes to the entire podium, about a minimum equipment list for all drones, open and specific, more about the safety than more security than the safety issue, because you said in your table, one of the last slides, that there will be FLAM, ADSB only in a high risk class, which is maybe proportionate regarding the safety. Mm-hmm. But when I talk about security, and I'm here in a city and I see a drone, and I want to know if it's a bad or a good one, I want to have it with an identification system. So we already advocated to the EASA Opinion 1, 2018, that every drone in Europe should have, if it doesn't fly at a model aerodrome, have an identification system. So we are really advocating for an extensive identification. What's your opinion about this?
I can tell you my opinion, but I think theirs is more important. So,
yeah. First, I can confirm that we have these mandatory requirement in the open category. We have in many cases not an explicit similar explicit requirement, for example, on pilot competence, on geo awareness, on electronic identification in the specific category, because it depends where this operation takes place. And for example, a FLAM or an ADSB out might be the more appropriate electronic identification tool when you operate, for example, on an aerodrome, and then it might even cause electronic interference if the CE marking identification system would be additionally installed. So we have the flexibility in the specific category, but we can assure you that when the risk of the operation is similar, or of course it's higher in the open category, but when the operation takes place in a similar environment, it will have an equivalent equipment requirement. That's one of the main arguments why we have these mandatory requirement in the open category.
There is one question on the back.
Yeah, now we will go to the question. Maybe we can start answer to some question on Slido. Yeah.
The first one is not on me. Good. I mean, does it apply to model aircrafts? Again, I know what is my counter, but I would rather allow them to answer.
So model aircraft, this is a topic that we discussed very much during the development of the regulation. We have a specific article dedicated to operation done by model aircraft in clubs and associations. So first of all, when someone is operating within a club's association, the member states can provide a special authorization to model aircraft. So in this case, it is a way to recognize the safety environments that are already developed by model club association as they have been operating in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. 100 years.
100 years.
100 years. How much do we want? Yeah, I know. But we can say that. So for sure, we have very good safety record in the as more as we are going to have experience on it. So in this case, we don't require to have a risk assessment operated. We just rely on the procedures that the Model Club Association already have in place. Different story is when a model, I am a newcomer, I buy a model, whatever is the model, and then I want to start flying without being part of a club or association. In that case, we cannot claim any kind of safety record, any kind of culture to this guy. So in this case, I should be treated in the same way are treated the other person that operate the normal drone. So either I go in the open category, following the limitation of the open category, or if I don't want to do something more, then I need to do a risk assessment. So just to recap, if I'm operating in a model club association, no risk assessment is mandated, but it's just the procedure already developed by the club. As Yves also was rightly saying, there will be still some operations that are a little bit more common, like drone racing, and for those we envisage to develop standard scenario. Now we can develop standard scenario also for other operations that are in the realm of the Model Club Association, and we will work with the European Association that already work with us for development of the regulation. So we will develop dedicated standard scenario for those kind of operations.
Timothy van Langeveld from the Dutch Drone Association. I was just wondering how you envision the role for qualified entities with regards to the SORA, and how do they fit into all of this? We've spoken about ANSPs, national aviation authorities. I know in the Netherlands we use a lot of qualified entities. Other countries do so as well, or might be thinking about it. I was just wondering what kind of role do you guys see for them in this whole story? Thank you.
You take that?
We have no explicit mentioning of qualified entities in the opinion, and that's not needed, as the basic regulation provides all possibilities for using qualified entities. So whenever an applicant approach, or the NAA, for example, decides to make use of a qualified entity for the assessment of the SORA and the authorization of the operation, that's possible.
Okay, so in the meantime, I can answer to the question that we have number one now on the Slido. The basic regulation underlined that safety, environmental security must be taken into account. SORA only deals with safety. How will others be included? Yeah, this is a very good question. As a matter of fact, it will be the topic of discussion of this afternoon. we have invited here experts from privacy and security that will give us some indication on how to develop a risk assessment. And our approach is that in our regulation, as an AMC, so as a decision to the regulation on open and specific, we will publish the SORA for the risk assessment on safety, but as well as also indication for privacy and security. So either we will reference to something that is already existing, or we will we add something that we will develop with the agencies and the authorities that are competent with these topics. So SORA will not be all. You need to include also the elements on privacy and security. Go question? Yeah. There is a microphone. Is a button on top. If you maybe you can go. I said that. You said that.
Hear me now? Yeah. No. Sorry, my name is Jürgen Lefebvre. I asked the earlier question on model aircraft. I represent the Swiss Model Aircraft Federation. In your answer, you said that there should be no risk assessment for operations authorized under the new Article 5, I think, in the latest June draft, the exemption for model clubs and associations. Now, the latest text that we've seen from June actually specifically refers to the authorization procedure laid down in UAS Spec 40, which explicitly requires a risk assessment. And when we read through the June draft, we assumed that this was an error because our understanding was that the authorization procedure under Article 5 would be left to the member states and would not be harmonized at the EU level. And the latest draft actually reverses that and uses the same authorization process for Article 5 authorizations for model clubs and associations as it uses for authorizations under a specific category, which is a bit different. And that's why I asked my question, because to do a SORA for the huge variety of model aircraft activities would be tremendously complicating. You'd basically be hitting every element of that spectrum. So our question is was that actually a drafting error, and will we revert this authorization process back to the national level?
So in the Article 5, I don't think there was any big changes between the initial proposal from us and what is in the latest. And we also say, in addition to what you said, that we are not requiring any additional showing of demonstration. So this is a way without any demonstration of compliance. So this is what is written on the article. So. Our approach was we reference to the operation authorization just to say that the national authority should at the end provide an authorization that this is similar to that, so with the same value, but with mentioning without additional demonstration of compliance was to imply that no risk assessment was required. If we think we can improve the wordings, it's still under evaluation by the European Commission. But so the intent was no risk assessment.
Yeah, I answered the first one. So the military airspaces, okay. Finger on the difficult point. I mean, when we said ANSP, I don't only say civil ANSP, right? I mean, the problem is that there are others. So the question there, the answer is that you need to coordinate with those that are flying there and are responsible for that airspace. Again, that's why I keep saying that it's difficult, because it is, right? The problem is you can have airspaces that are owned by the civil ANSP and others that are owned by the military ANSP. And if so, well, you need to coordinate with them. You know how and how the process will apply. Again, you go through the process with the military ANSP. Okay, that's the way you do it. It's the same process, but it will be dealt with a different authority. That's the idea. And also automatized eventually with a different authority, if at all possible. How does a drone operator declare an emergency to the ATM? Well, that's a good question. I mean, the answer is in the way that the ATM wants. So depends on the operation. I mean, I have operations in which the local, air traffic controllers and airspace authority said, give me a phone call. Other cases in which they said, well, you need to be able to speak on the radio with me on the frequency, and for that you need to have a radio operator license and whatsoever. This depends, again, on the specifics of where you are flying, which airspace are you declaring emergency into, with whom you are speaking, and what is the agreed line of communication. That's what is beautiful about the specific, that there is not a single answer to this question. It really depends on the environment you are in. So this question about the quantitative to qualitative, I mean, this is it's actually a good question. The thing is, the tables that you have seen developed and the further risk mitigations and measure and so on, they have been done with the quantitative engine in the background. So there is a paper, actually I will provide a link, there is a paper that links the traditional ways of doing quantitative risk assessments with with the SORA methods, and find basically matches. Why? Because for numbers up to 5 and 6, you can prove qualitatively that you meet that number. That's the same thing we do in manned aviation as well. I mean, you don't prove quantitatively everything. There is a level below which you can start to prove qualitatively that you meet that number. So the theory behind the number is quantitative. There is an engine on the background that is quantitative, but the objective of the SORA was to remove the complexity of quantitative assessments from the operator so that he doesn't have to do it. So we did it for him, and the result is qualitative. So that's the way it works. And now, of course, there will need to be some level of validation and verification of the assumptions. But so far, so good. What about the use space? Oh, Anders. Anders, if you ask me, like 2019 we should be done. But I think Koen will tell you end of 2018. But it's beyond my powers. I don't know. Koen, maybe you can take this one.
Oops. Thank you for the interesting question on the use space. It's high on the political agenda, and we really that was an issue mentioned during the various consultation meetings. So people are aware that use space could provide very useful tools and could facilitate the life of operators and of authorities. We all know it. The question is, to which extent already do the two Commission regulations on the table already provide the basic stepping stones of registration, identification, geo-awareness, and to which extent can we develop the further steps? In order to give answers to those questions, we have established a reflection group with some member states, some industry people. That reflection group has been reflecting and will soon in the coming days send out a final report with recommendations. The set of preliminary recommendations is firstly the three requirements: registration, e-identification, geo-awareness, as already laid down in the draft Commission regulations, are a good step forward into the right direction. However, they are not sufficient to cover those three requirements. And of course, in order to regulate on a full use space, we will need to take another regulatory initiative. And then the question is, how fast can we develop this regulatory initiative? And this is still under consideration within the Commission and with wider stakeholders. How fast can we go? Do we have to learn from expertise, from demonstrators? Or is there already a sufficient evidence base to come up with the first draft of a use-based regulation? And that is a question that we have to solve in the coming months. And this is the state of play. It's really ongoing reflections. Thank you for the question.
You can take another one from if you want. I don't know if there is other.
Is there any other question from the floor? So maybe we can continue with...
Yeah, I mean, timely communicating with Medivac, I think it's similar to the ATM. It depends on with whom are you trying to communicate. So I know that in my country I have one to communicate with in certain area or two or three in others. You just ask them, how do you want me to communicate with you? And they will tell you. Of course, this is when you are doing a specific operation, right? Now, if you're doing a scenario, you need to come up with something that scale a little bit better. So, as an example of this, on the U-Space, our main rescue helicopter association there has pretty much agreed to pinpoint on the map where every helicopter is going to land in the next 10 minutes or 5 minutes, because they know it in advance, okay? And they don't fly below 150 meters. This is a myth. They fly high. And then they land. They have a 1 kilometer radius, they come over, and then they land where they need to land. You could know exactly where they are landing on the U-Space 5 minutes before they go there. Right? And they would be very happy to do that, because otherwise they have to deal with all the different drones that are around. And if you tell them, oh, but we can offer you the certified solution of putting ADS-B out low power and so that you will know every drone, they will tell you forget about it, because if you have 100 drones, they will clutter even my helicopter screen at low power. So this could work, but maybe it's not the one solution. You need to discuss. It's not, there is no silver bullet. That's the problem. You need to, in the context of the specific, you need to look at the specifics of what you are doing, which is also why the standard scenarios are not as easy as it looks, because again, it could change country by country. There are famous local conditions which you need to take care of, okay? But the idea is that, again, they are part of this. They don't live in a separate world. You need to put them in the loop and say, how do you want me to communicate with you? And then they will tell you. The second one is ground risk process. How do you understand populated environment? That's a very good question. The reason why, because we have this question coming up in the team, again, since the past 3 years. And even there you have the two camps, There is the quantitative camp, which I'm starting to belong to, by the way. I'm changing my mind. The quantitative camp is saying, give me the number. How many people per square meter make it populated environment, or per square kilometer if it's on the crowd, okay? I want to know exactly what it is. And what is the difference between 200, 2,000, and 20,000? I want to know that specifically. The other camp, which is more American camp and some others, they are saying, well, we leave that to the court of law, right? Everybody kind of knows what populated is, and when you will make a judgment call when you apply, and the authority will say, yeah, this is not populated, or yes, it's populated. And if something goes wrong, the judge will decide whether it was populated or not, and then that will be the actual law for the future. So for the moment, we parked in Working Group 6 the question, which I don't think it's a wrong question to ask, especially in light of the new tools that actually are able to give you specifically how many people there are every 10 square meters, right? And so if you have this information, you really want to know, can I fly over 1 people in 10 square meters, or 2 or 5 or 10? So I think we will have to, at least in JAROS, we will reopen the discussion. I tried already a few times, but I failed. But I would like to reopen. But I think also in the European world, it could be an interesting topic. Also to eliminate this point about flying over a city is dangerous. Well, a city is full of empty places. It's full of places that are completely sheltered. And there are few roads where it's full of people. So, in terms of safety, it's not really true that flying over a city is dangerous. It depends where the people are. And so you need to look into this specifically. So I think this is actually a good question, and we'll try to give an answer to that from JARO's perspective at least. Industry standards yet to be developed. Natalie, if you want me to go on. What we are saying in the SORA is basically that if you have industry standards available for some of the mitigations that you want to employ, using them is a very smart way to get an approval. And I don't know, FAA, they are developing a parachute standard, okay? So when somebody comes and say, I have a good parachute, well, one question could be, have you developed according to the standard? If yes, well, it must be good, then you only need to prove it. But technically, it's a good parachute because it's to standard. So the SORA is acknowledging that. It's saying, well, if you have a standard, use it. Now, if you don't have a standard, it doesn't mean that your parachute is bad. It only means that you have more burden of proof. You need to now come to me, and I need to look at it and say, okay, is it good or not? Are you considered? So it is more cumbersome without standards. And this is why we try to establish some sort of an alliance in Europe, at least, with Eurokai 105, with our friends Michel Alouche, and saying to them, guys, if you now take the SORA and you look at areas where standards could be helpful, are you in a position to develop those standards? And so EuroCAE as a 105 as a subgroup which is dealing specifically with the SORA, that are supposed to issue a report, I mean now, as soon as possible. I don't remember now the date, but it should be very soon. And if somebody's in EuroCAE 105 and can answer this, please, but I don't know. There is a report coming out identifying specifically which standard EuroCAE thinks they can develop in support of this risk assessment. And after this is actually approved by the EuroCAE, whatever, they will do it. Okay. Others are also developing standards. I know I'm looking at Juanjo from the Spanish CAA. I mean, you did an amazing job in developing a lot of supporting material which is standard-like, you know, in many areas like C3 or cybersecurity and so on, in supporting, let's say, the Spanish CAA and operators in complying with the SORA. And we are trying to find ways to, you know, spill this out of Spain and import into JARUS, because I think it's very useful material.
If I may, Lorenzo,
yes,
just a compliment to what you say. Of course, we will use EuroCAE standard, but we are also planning to use other standards. Would they be coming from other standardization organizations? Would they be available and fitting the bill? So I just wanted to mention that to avoid any misinterpretation. Thank you.
Yeah, well done. Thank you, Yves. No more questions. It's black. The system is fed up. So basta, stop with this sort of stuff, you know. Go home. Okay, the question about safe or unsafe design or whatever, if you look at the way it's handled within the SORA is spread throughout the different mitigations and as well as the bingo table. So if you go in the bingo tables, a lot of the safety objectives that you need to comply to, depending on the different sale, relate to the design. Okay, so it's not, there is no black and white answer, say, how do I do if something is safe or unsafe? You need to look at your sale and look at the specific requirements that deal with the design, and by complying with those objectives, you will then prove that your aircraft is safe enough for the operation you intend to conduct. Okay. Obviously, when you go in there and there is a line that says the aircraft is designed to acceptable standards, and if you look at the mitigation when it says high, a highly robust design, acceptable design to standard, sounds very similar to a certification. Of course, certification then is the authority puts a seal on it, but the concept is you will end up doing something similar to that. But it's not always required, and not always required on the full aircraft. That's the way it's done. Yeah, I don't know the answer to the top one. Hopefully. Otherwise, they will become irrelevant. I mean, it's not that they can choose whether drones fly or not. So, I mean, I think you got to prepare for it. This thing is coming, you know. This is my feeling. But I don't know. You should ask others. I don't know. I can speak to my NSP. Actually, they are waiting for this to happen, because at the moment, the way this is dealt with, without scenarios, without things, is that you have a special approval team which is looking at every application one by one. They have a lot of applications, and it's tedious for them, and they cannot just say, I don't want to fly. That doesn't work. I don't want to approve you. This doesn't work. This is airspace, people can fly. So they are going through these approvals, and they are really looking forward for something that can ease the work of this group, which is now made of 6 to 7 people. So, but
maybe one of the future standard scenarios, for example, could cover operations in airport environment, which are more and more operations that are being requested. So this kind of a scenario would already include all the provisions for managing these drones within that environment with the appropriate coordination with the airport authority and ANSP. So this could be an example of future standard scenario covering this aspect.
Maybe additional on the role of the ANSP or the readiness of the ANSP. Now, we heard the comment that earlier that controllers do not want to see the drone on the screen, and there might be some truth in this, and probably automation is key on that respect to provide the information to the humans that need the information. And in this context, we see today nearly all ANSPs closely cooperating with technology companies, and we really have the impression that they are ready and embracing these new developments. Maybe an ANSP might comment on that.
There is a question, Natalia, from...
Hi, morning Lorenzo, sorry, good afternoon. Rob Markwell here from the UK Civil Aviation Authority. We had a good discussion in Jarris the other week about the SORA. The question that I have now, having read the new draft implementation regulations for the specific category and everything to do with UAS, that if you use the SORA methodology and you go beyond a score of 7, you can't use the SORA. Now, until certified category has been defined and is in effect, how are operators who fall outside of the risk score of 7 going to be able to conduct an operation? Is that where EASA are going to allow us to use the ALTMOC in the interim until certified category standards are developed, if we can't use the SORA?
Mm-hmm. I only can answer.
You avoided that one there, didn't you, Lorenzo?
I can only answer about the SORA. You know, for me, more than 7, it's you guys are crazy. They have to deal with that.
Well, no, because we could have some very big platforms.
You are right. You are right.
Yeah. And if we can't use an ALTMOC, then how do we do research and development for industry?
Okay, I will try to respond to that one. It's actually one point that we are discussing with the Commission, is a possibility to introduce some clear discriminant into the rule to explain the separation between the certified and specific category. So that would be one element that could perhaps help people to identify in which category they would fall. Unfortunately, I'm afraid we can use the word above 7 because it wouldn't work really in the rule. But we will have to. We are considering to use some qualifiers to explain what something could become certified. For example, carrying passengers. We are also starting to develop, to work. We have started to work on the certified category. The intention is to have it a bit later in time, probably medium time. But I think what we could do, pending we have the rule, is, well, we know already how to certify a drone. We have been doing it. We are doing it in the agency. I think we could also work with, for example, if there is an urgent need, with the flexibility provision of the basic regulation in order to address other areas like operation, licensing, ATM or aerodrome. That would probably need the support of the member state, but it's a way to operate pending we have the rule, and in the case we have something quite well identified as being in the certified category. I hope this helps a bit.
It's a yes or no answer that I'm looking for. Can you use an ALTMOC in lieu of certification until it comes in if you can't use the SORA? That's what I just need to know. It's a yes or no answer, I'm afraid. I understand what you're saying in the future, but as it stands, is the ALTMOC going to be acceptable?
Okay, sorry if I didn't respond to that directly. The answer is plain no. An ALTMOC. No, it's not meant for that. It's an alternative means of compliance. So if you would move into a different category of operation, I'm not sure how you can use an alt-mock in that circumstance. All I can say is that a possible solution right now would be to use a flexibility provision of the basic regulation.
Okay, so what you're saying is if you can't use the SORA, you're not in the specific category, basically. That's it. So there's no other way around that in terms of implementing regulations for UAS. We've got it, and that's what we've got to use.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say is that if you get out, I mean, if either by using the SORA or by the sort of qualifier we intend to put in place into the revised draft, if you fall out of the specific category, then you are in the certified. And in that case, we cannot, I mean, we will have to operate again using those flexibility provision, but then alt-mock would not work.
Okay. Doesn't work. Thank you.
There is a question here.
Thank you. I'm Manfred Mohr. I'm representing the old guys, the ATM classic areas. I'm working for IATA. 290 airlines are in our associations. So I just want to come back to your questions because this was mostly important for us. I think your final remarks concern about too simple or too complex. My answer is just do it right. Just do it right because we have our experience already with ADS-B, ADS-C, data link. This is chaos. Nobody knows when it will be come into place, and we are working on heavily on the extension of all these deadlines and multi-frequencies, and we have already this kind of experience. So please do it right, do it safe, do it secure, but do it fair. And one statement: the controllers don't want to see it, the drone on the radar screen. It has nothing to do with they don't want to see it. The problem is we have no tracking system at the moment. Most of the drones are not seen, not available. And if you see a drone, this is not coordinated. This is our problem. And the controller, and I just asked my colleague from Kanso, of course they want to see it if it's coordinated or if it's really a safety issue. They are not against this, but we need tracking system. We need this e-identification system, what a colleague said already. This is a fantastic idea. Of course, they are good drones and they are bad drones. Okay, and these are our urgent questions. And coming back to your too restrictive or too permissive, here again, when you go into place with a new aircraft, this process sometimes is taking between 5 and 6 years. Please don't do it for the drones. Yeah. Because if you do this, most of the companies are represented by the lady from France, for example. They will be already bankrupt. Also, you have to do it in this kind of momentum has to be done different. The next one was ANSP or no ANSP. Of course, if you want to be as ANSP involved, you have to pay. And so far, what I have heard from the industry, from the UAS, is that they are not very much interested to pay for the service, so they have their own ideas. We are paying, and you can imagine that the ATM charges and fees, what we are paying, should not be used for this drone industry. This is our biggest concern. On top of safety and security, fairness is also very important. If you spend already all this wonderful money, what comes from us, and these are billions of euro, it should be done in a very positive and fair, competitive way. And the last one was the digital or paper-based, please. Also paper is old school. Also I'm old, I have grandchildren, they are not playing with any paper anymore. I think that they are reading still some books, but please do it digital. And this is promised by the European Commission, more digitalization, and the master plan will take this into account, and I hope it will continue like that. Thank you, Lorenzo, for your presentation.
Maybe I just want to say, I agree with all what you said. So the answers is what I had in mind, right? That's it. Good.
Yes, thank you, Manfred. I think we are also trying to what we have tried to develop. We hope will meet those objectives. They are sometimes a bit contradicting, so it's not an easy art. But we are certainly trying to take all those elements into account into what we have proposed. So we have a clear proposal on the table at the time being. I hope that we have found a reasonable balance between the risk and developing the operations. Am I right, am I wrong? That I don't know. The time will tell, but at the time being, I think we have a reasonable proposal on the table.
My name is Robert van Nieuwland. I'm representing DARPAS, the professional drone associations from the Netherlands. I have a question on the light side of the operations. Envisioning the open class, when this is going to be published and the open class is open, we are still there with drones who are flying now and they have not the CE marking. In the regulation it says in the open class drones are allowed to fly up to 120 meters if they have the CE marking. What happens to all those aircrafts around which don't have the CE markings? Do you envision extra restrictions on these?
I don't like art.
Thank you, Rob. I think it's a very I will need to eat that microphone. I think this is a very important question that you're asking. We have started to define into the Implementing Act, that's Article 13, 14, 15, and 16, an implementation plan. I'm afraid it would be a bit difficult to describe it here without any support to explain what I'm saying, but what we have tried to find is a correct balance between try to put the rule in place as soon as possible, give the reasonable time to industry and member state to adapt, and try to also take the objective to have, as Koen has described, something started in 2019. So there is a set of paragraphs. They are not perhaps of the greatest clarity at the time being. We had a meeting with member state. We had a meeting also with stakeholders recently in which this very question was asked. But what we are trying to allow for the open categories, to allow it to start probably next year, but putting some compensating, as we may not have the pilot training and as we will not have the CE marking for a drone, to find some compensating factor to allow to start. So that's the idea that we have in place. We have also elements to allow older drones to continue, but then in the A1 and A3 category, subcategories, I'm sorry. So we have a plan. It's a bit difficult to explain it in details, but I can send you, well, if you have seen the proposal, the paragraph may not be easier, but we made a presentation with the help of the colleagues at the last stakeholder meeting on July 3rd, which we can add perhaps to this workshop, so you could have what I'm saying could be a bit clearer.
That would be very helpful, because I get a lot of questions of our members. What should I do? Should I wait to buy a new drone, or can I just continue using the ones I have? Business-wise, that's very important.
These are very valid questions, no doubt about it. So we have put a particular effort to this implementation. I don't know to say if applicability plan, implementation plan, but we will add to the slides that were distributed, that were presented today. We will add those particular slides on the transition, on this applicability plan. So it should be helpful to you, and I believe that still comments could be accepted on that.
Okay, so we still have some time before lunch, so maybe we can go on with another question. On the
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we like the SORA vanilla.
So that's about the designer of the drone, manufacturer responsibility. Here it is highly dependent on the sale and the type of mitigation you are claiming for. So we have seen already that for certain sales up, there is a role to play from a manufacturer point of view to actually provide evidence that some of the objectives set forth by the SORA can actually be met or not. Okay. And so how to do this effectively and efficiently, I don't know if I'm the right person to answer. I know how am I doing it in my nation for certain manufacturers, but the bottom line is if you want, as a manufacturer, your product to be used for certain sales, then you need to be in a condition to support the operator in making the claim that a certain sale has been achieved. How you do that? Your call. I mean, sell him the safety package, do some pre-cooked assessments and say this aircraft is good for sale 3 and above because of these reasons, or sale 3 and below because of these reasons. I mean, you guys were also thinking about something on that. Maybe Natalie can explain maybe the EASA thought process for this, but there is clearly a role to play, that's for sure. Eh?
Yeah, so at this moment we are thinking what would be the best way to do to also to involve the design and manufacturer. So one of the possibility could be that when in the future we will have a number of standard scenario for which there will be some mitigation measures, a manufacturer could target his drone to meet some of the mitigation that are part of a standard scenario, especially when there are under declaration for which there will be some very detailed, also technical requirements to be complied with. So the manufacturer could identify for which kind of market he want to develop the drone, and then already say that this kind of drone could be compliant with those requirements. Or no, in the other possibility is always at the end the US operator responsible to complete the risk assessment package, and if there are some specific technical requirements that drive also some manufacturer and design responsibility, this will be under possibly a contract between the manufacturer, the operator and the manufacturer. So when we ask to have a complete risk assessment, all the responsibilities is under the US operator. Yeah, the next one, I mean, Henry, where is Henry? You need to explain me what is the vanilla SORA, whatever. Then I can answer. But I mean, it's on. Yeah, exactly. That's really on you, right? So I'm good with our SORA.
Okay, thank you, Henri, for the question. I will not comment on vanilla because personally I prefer strawberry, but it's my choice. But what I can say is that the intention is that we intend to use SORA and to adopt the SORA that will come out of the JARUS process. That's a very clear intention of us. We will also see what's come actually out, but the intention is really to use it.
So the next one is a tricky one. I'm not sure I want to take that. Maybe it's more on you because you made this thing. So CE marking, and I'll use them in the SORA.
Yeah. So the CE marking, as also is expressed, they are for the open category. That is correct. But in the way we are structuring also the standard scenario is that we can have technical requirements for the standard scenario that could be based on the some of the requirements already defined in the open category with the CE marking. So, for example, we can say that for some kind of operation, you should have at least a drone class C3, and then in addition, maybe there could be some other technical requirements that you need to put in place. Or for some standard scenarios that don't require extensive technical requirements, maybe a C3, C2, marking could be already enough to mitigate all the risk from a technical point of view. Maybe there will be some other mitigation from operation and the pilot competency. So we will try to reuse as much as possible in order to facilitate the life for the operator. But so it will be case by case.
Lunchtime.
So we have now the last, we can answer to the last question, either on the floor or we continue on the Slido before lunch.
Angela Kies, DFS, the German Air Navigation Service Provider. I want to refer to what our colleague from IATA was commenting on your final remarks. The one thing is you said ATM has to be in the loop or an ANSP has to be in the loop. Therefore, I always want to ask, how is this a requirement combined or aligned with the SES regulation? Will there be will there be some effort on this? Will this already be for the next regulative period? Because this goes very much in line with the first UTM steps or U-space steps taken. And the other question is with regards to tracking. We all know that one solution to track the drones in very low-level airspace is via mobile phone infrastructure. So how is the regulation here aligned with mobile communication or spectrums regulation? This would be my other question. Maybe it's to Koen, I think.
So sorry, I was checking my mails. If I have well understood your question, the idea was to which extent could we use other new technologies in the drone world, telecom technologies in general, to keep the drone operation safe. You know that we have in the different types of categories of operations, the open one, we already have there some specific requirements, e-identification and so on, so which currently is still under debate, and how far we can go for a specific solution. And then the question is, can we impose there a safety or enforcement solution, or can we already go for a first step for a use-based solution? But that is still under deliberation, and I think it's high time now to come up with a final proposal in the implementing and the delegated acts. I think we have to take some political questions to make sure that we cover the first needs with regard to applicability and enforcement, and then we will see how far we can go with what we call use-based solutions. And then this also depends on what I earlier said, how fast can we go with our use-based solutions, and what is our thinking there, and how can we there make the technology or the system technology neutral, that we not only go for telecom solutions, but that we can cater for different technologies at the same time. So this our thinking. It's now that we have to take decisions how far we can jump with the current draft regulations to focus only on application enforcement, or already go for a first solid step with regard to use space. And these decisions are now pending. And I thank you for your question. It's very interesting. I can only refer back to my earlier reply to where we are with the U-Space, and that is part of this reflection. Yes, I'm sorry that I was a bit distracted. For me, it's already 12:30. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that now the lunch should be ready. So we will break until 1:13. We will come back. We will discuss now the security and privacy.